I can hear you, yes.
Hi, and we can hear you, Jasmine. Yay!
Hello, everyone.
Hi!
Hi, Teo.
Hi.
Yay! Teo, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yay! And we can hear you. This is a wonderful thing that saves us the next 20 minutes of Sam pulling their hair out. So, yay! Well, welcome. Thank you so much to both of you for making the time to join us at our little queer comic shop in Baltimore so we can talk to you about rooms.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you both so much for being here. Because you're both on the West Coast, right? So it's like the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, like
For you
yeah,
guys.
3:30 over here.
Nice. And it's not 20 something degrees there like it is here. So we're only
Oh, no.
It's
It's
34.
pretty.
Oh,
We're
okay,
in
It's
the
that's all
pretty.
right.
30s.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty cold over here, so I'm in
oh,
bed
yeah,
right
oh,
now.
Well, it's pretty toasty on my end, so I'll take some of that sweater weather, but it's about 75 over here.
um, well, I would love it if you can each start by sharing a little bit more about yourselves and your journey into comics.
Sure. Yeah, my journey into comics is a little bit roundabout. I actually got my degree in pastry arts, so I have a culinary degree, and I used to be a baker professionally for about 10 years. And when I closed my baking business, I used to have like a specialty cookie business. And when I closed that, I was wondering what I was going to do with myself. And after thinking about it for a bit, I was like, before I decided to go into pastry, my other option was I really loved comics and storytelling, and I thought about going to art school. And I was like, let's revisit that, see how it goes. And I'd always been like I'd been following comics people, but I had never done it professionally. And I was like, let me give this a go. I'm someone who loves like making lists and checking things off and having a 5-year plan. So I kind of had the same approach for comics, and I went in and I was like, all right, let me study what kind of portfolio do I need? Who do I need to be talking to? What does it take to be a professional? And I decided to build a portfolio using like short comics where I wrote scripts and I drew them. And then I realized I'm very slow at drawing. And I was going to instead pay people to draw faster than I could. And I began doing short comics that I put on my website, started making friends. I don't like when people network just to get better, like to kind of rise up in the ranks. I think that's a really kind of sleazy way of doing it. I would much rather make friends and make cool stuff with those friends. And yeah, and that's kind of my journey. It was very roundabout, but I feel like everyone in comics is kind of roundabout.
Yeah, that's what we hear
Um,
a lot. I think almost everybody starts with like, "This isn't the traditional way," and there's no traditional way.
There's no traditional way.
How about you, Teo?
so I, from a very young age, was drawing, um, and it was when I was in high school that my art teacher helped me figure out that I could go to school for art because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just played a lot of soccer and drew. So she helped me find an art school. So I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York, and I graduated with a cartooning degree. So I guess my route was very straightforward because I got a cartooning degree. I got a graphic novel job right out of college, and worked freelance ever since, like professionally freelance. Um, and yeah, it really wasn't until the last couple years that I started like now I'm also a barista and like a merchandise artist. It was really with like the pandemic that I started like branching out because I couldn't be home alone all the time. Um, but yeah, like since then I've done work for Star Wars, I've done work for DC, so Avatar, The Last Airbender. Yeah, a lot of anthologies, a lot of comic anthologies, a lot of coffee table art books. Yeah, and then brooms, and here we are.
So speaking of rooms, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about some of the inspiration behind the story, sort of how that came to be. I know you alluded to it a little bit in sort of the letter in the back of the book, Jasmine, but if you could share a little bit about sort of the journey of rooms to being right here in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Journey of Brooms was very much a mixture of both wanting to write a story where I saw people like myself and my family um, in an unusual setting. When it comes to magic, especially in a historical setting in like 1930s, 1920s, it's usually going to be set in somewhere like New York, Harlem Renaissance, somewhere a little like glitz and glam. And I was like, where's my country folk? Because my family is from the country, and I wanted to represent that. I wanted to see more of that and see what it would be like, what history would be like with magic, but also like what doesn't change and how that affects the people who, don't get invited to fancy magical academies, and what do they do and how do they thrive and survive. Um, and also a little bit of spite, there's a lot of books about magical schools and magic happening, and they tend to be very white, and they tend to be very Eurocentric. Um, and I wanted to step away from that. Like, one thing I like to mention is that in Brooms, there's talk of these magic academies, but you never actually see them on page. And there's a reason for that, because that is not the world these girls are in. And it's not the world they want to be in. And I wanted to show their world and their community and how they're thriving. So I wanted to show an alternate way for people to learn and pass down and share their magical, practices and their cultures with each other in these communities that they build themselves. So yeah, that would be my main inspiration.
And then, so when Jasmine reached out to me about this, I agreed very quickly because on my end, I really like drawing witchy stuff. It's always been a really big component in my art. Um, but any like witch related jobs I had gotten in the past were all centered on cis women, typically cis white women, um, with I think some like heavy handed um, I guess heavy-handed like allegories using like cis white women as a stand-in for all marginalized peoples, and I was getting pretty tired of that. And I was really just like turning down jobs that I didn't really believe in. So when Jasmine came to me and was like, "Hey, these are about like witches of color, set in like alternate United States," I was like immediately zoned in and was like, "This is what I've been waiting for. Like, this is like some like meaningful witch content that wasn't just like chasing the trend. Like, it was coming from a really genuine place." So I knew I had to be part of it. So I said yes immediately.
Which was a surprise to me because I sent that email at 2 a.m. feeling very brave. Definitely not expecting a yes. I was very surprised and very happy. It was definitely this book came to is very much a dream team. Like, all the people that I was like, I don't know if they'll be available or if they'll want to work with me. Because when I started writing Brooms, almost nobody knew who I was in comics. I mean, people still don't know who I am in comics, but like, I definitely didn't have anybody. And so I reached out to people and I was like, I don't know if they'll answer, especially Teo. I'd followed Teo for a while and loved his work, and I was like, it's 2 a.m. I'm feeling brave. Worst they could say is no. And to my surprise, they said yes. So yeah, this book was a lot of luck. Got into it, and I was very, very grateful to have so many incredible people say yes to it.
And how did it go from the inspiration stage to the emailing bravery 2 a.m. stage?
Well, I wrote up a very brief synopsis of the book. I knew I had a very strong sense of what I wanted. It was the basics were all the same. The characters' names, a lot of them changed, but the basics, I was like, it's going to be set in 1930s Mississippi. It's going to be centered around these 6 young witches of color. We're going to have a lot of queer rep. We're going to have trans rep. And I wanted it to be a representation of real people being affected by the government that they're under in a world with magic. And I also wanted to, but I didn't want it to feel like a sad struggle story. I was like, nah, we got enough of that. What I wanted was an underdog sports story. So I was like, we're going to do some illegal broom racing. It's going to feel a little bit like, back alley drag racing kind of sort of situations. And I wanted that energy. I wanted like anime sports energy coming into this, not sad history energy. Um, and yeah, so I wrote up a little pitch and I was like, who am I going to send this to? And I was like, well, let's just aim high. Let's aim high at 2 a.m. when I, feeling brave before I go to bed.
You mentioned that some of the names and things change it. Did the sort of the vision of the characters, the design, did that come from sort of your inspiration? Was that more Teo sort of bringing what you were thinking to life?
I'll let Teo talk about the designs. Yeah, no,
Hmm.
that's your.
Yeah. Um, so so Billy May is the only character who like Jasmine had a concrete design for, um, which was great because it like gave me a really good sense of her character. So Billy May's like design, how I drew her is like was Jasmine's concept. Everyone else though, Jasmine gave me like just character descriptions, personality traits, like things she wanted included in their character, but otherwise let me bring those characters like to life essentially. So each character, let's see, most of the characters I think went through like a round or two of revisions, some more than others, but like generally speaking, I had a really good sense of what I wanted the characters to look like based on their descriptions. It yeah, it felt like I could really like see them when I read their descriptions, which was really nice. Like I really felt like I could bring them to life really naturally. So when I was designing them, it was honestly more a matter of like researching like a period accurate clothing than like figuring out like, oh, I knew what their hair would look like, or I knew what I wanted their faces to look like, and like their different body types. Yeah, so that was really fun. It was a really nice like organic like hybrid of Jasmine's ideas and my interpretation of her ideas.
Was there a character that was the most fun to draw?
Oh, yeah. Um, Weirdly enough, Emma was really difficult for me to draw. I still don't really know why. But there was something about I really loved drawing Emma. Emma and Maddie, I loved anytime I got to draw them. Really all the characters. But for some reason, Emma was one where I would draw her face, and which is crazy because Emma and Maddie like have the same face. I like did that on purpose. One of them has like obviously Maddie has a thinner face, and Emma has a rounder face. But I like they have the same nose and everything because they're twins. And I was like, oh, I'm so smart. Like this will be just be one little thing that's like a little less work for me. I should not have done that for some reason. Like Emma was so difficult for me to draw, and it got to the point where I was like, if I had just given her a different nose, maybe. Like I got in my head about it a lot. It made me like like in Frozen, they use the same assets for the sisters. Like it's just the same face, copy and pasted. I was like, God, I wish I had a computer program because like then I could just copy and paste it. But it didn't really work the same for drawing, and I have no idea to this day like why Emma was so hard for me to draw. But there were a lot of times where I drew her face multiple times, and finally would just like land on the one where I was like, okay, I need to move on. Like we got to go to the next panel. Um, yeah, Emma, for how cute and very simple her design is, she really threw me for a loop. But it seems like very in character for her. She's full of surprises, so
Jasmine, was there a character that you most enjoyed writing, or whose voice you heard the loudest while you were writing?
I mean, all the girls had such distinct voices, and they were all really fun to write. But yeah, it's not a secret that Billy Mays definitely kind of was the very first character that I thought of for the book, and has always been kind of a core character for me personally when writing the book. When I came up with her design, I was like, I want to cosplay Billy May. So I need to design a character specifically so that I can cosplay her. Uh, but her voice is really fun. She reminds you of like some of my like aunts, and she's got this like very good southern energy where she's a little bit goofy. um the one line in there where she's like, "Them beans were good eating." Like, I really love doing her little asides, where she's kind of like talking under her breath, like, "Man, Devil Seeking Degenerates would be a really good team name." Like those sort of like little sidelines. She was really fun to write, but all the characters, as I wrote them, they really developed their own really distinct personalities, and that it's always fun for me as a writer to really dig into like each of these characters and let them kind of build their own voice, and play with that. Like Maddie and Emma, when Emma gets sassy, even though she's using sign language, it still reads across. And her and Maddie kind of playing siblings, nitpicking. I have 3 siblings of my own, so we're always constantly at each other's throat in like a fun sibling way. And yeah, like I love Loretta's like no nonsense attitude. I love Chang Jun's just really kind of fun tomboyish energy, and Luella, who's just very quiet until she gets a little fierce, and then you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, they were each very fun in their own way, but definitely Billy May is probably the closest to my heart.
I mean, we were kind of curious how you landed into the YA category. Like, did you think of this as a YA book? Did it get edited down to a YA book, or like, did it evolve there? Like, what happened?
Yeah, so we kind of knew it was going to be YA. We weren't sure. There was some question of whether or not it was going to end up in middle grade because of Maddie and Emma's characters are younger, but I was like, nah, the entire cast is going to be a little older. So I think the main question is, it comes from usually when you get to the publisher, and the publisher's like, where are we going to put this on the shelf? Where is it going to fit in best? And there was a little bit of like, should this be in middle grade? And I was like, I think it should be in YA. Like, I feel like I mean, I personally feel like it's for such a big age range, but they always have to like, no, we need a distinct, we can't just put it in a general shelf. We need a distinct place to put it on a bookshelf in a bookstore. So we kind of knew from the beginning it was going to be YA. Yeah, we didn't age down the characters at all. So these were not like older characters who were aged down to fit a YA book or anything like that, which I know happens in some other realms. We knew these were going to be young characters. Like the older teens are a little older, but even then they kind of average out into like a YA, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the oldest is like 19. So and like a note with our publisher, they didn't have us take anything out. They didn't they actually encouraged Jasmine to add more. So like the spread, the like montage, like scrapbook spread at the end, that was our editor's idea, to add a nice little like finishing like moment for everyone to see how all the characters aged. So what was really cool with our publisher is that like they were so genuinely on board with our story, and to have like Jasmine write it, just like they helped like edit, like make it the best version possible, but at no point were like Jasmine and our editor butting heads over like having content removed, which is like pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I can't help but like be a huge proponent for Levine Querido is the publisher, and they're smaller, but they are truly like absolute like hearts of gold. Our team was really tiny. Like, I want to say 6 people total on LQ's side, and like they were all working their butts off, and like the whole time we're just like really excited about Brooms, and really just like letting Jasmine write the story that she wanted to write, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, they were our biggest cheerleaders, and I know it's really rare in publishing to take a book, especially a book that is about, BIPOC people, about queer people. It's got transness in it. It's, we literally call it the KKK at some point. And I was worried when I pitched it. I was like, we've got a lot going on in this book. I wonder if they're going to ask me to, take out 1 or 2 elements to make it more palatable. But they were like, nah, let's go. Add some more if you want to, like, just go nuts. And which is really rare for a publisher. But, they say they want to encourage diversity and diverse voices, and I think they're one of the few people who actually back up what they say in reality. So yeah.
That's really interesting. I think as we've been having these conversations with creators, as you sort of already mentioned, we hear a lot from folks that they either sort of like wrote an adult graphic novel, but were told like that's like adult queer graphic novels, like basically unless you're Alison Bechdel, like they don't have a spot on the shelf. So maybe think younger, and then folks who wanted something more middle grade, and they're like, oh, but you as soon as you sort of like add a trans character, that make it like, oh, now we have to gear it a little bit older, even though the story is perfectly otherwise for like an 8-year-old. So it's always interesting to see and hear where folks get to land. So I'm glad you had such a positive experience with your publisher.
Yeah, we got super lucky. We got the dream team working on this, and we got a publisher that completely backed us up. So, yeah, I think this is one of the rare cases where no complaints.
I was wondering because I was wondering about like sort of like the creative process between you two. I understand like what you have character designs in your story, but I was wondering if there's any times where like the way that Taylor like interpreted like a scene or framed it visually like changed the like was inspiring or changed the way that you yourself even saw like the story or like changed the way you thought about a character or anything like that.
Yeah, I'll let Teo say it for the most part, but I would say definitely I love collaborating. When it comes to working on comics, I don't just want to write a script and send it out and be like, here's for you to draw, don't change anything. I'm absolutely trying my best to reach out and be like, tell me what you want to do. Let's make this as our project as possible. So yeah, Teo, feel free to.
Yeah, so well, I can say like in direct comparison to the first book I worked on, which is like, I mean, I worked on it. I wouldn't say I don't really advertise it anywhere because it wasn't a passion project by any means. It was like something I was just hired to work on, and the author, like, I barely talked to the author, and I was essentially hired to just directly draw each panel. Um, and it felt very mechanical and very sterile. But like this project, Jasmine from the very beginning was super upfront with like what she said. We're collaborators. This is something we are bringing to life together, and it's going to be like we're in it for the long haul. So if there were any points where I felt like I could tweak things a little bit, simplify things, like that's really big. Jasmine gave me like the go ahead, like right up front, like, hey, if you see anything, like make the change, and like I'll probably like it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, like, all right. So yeah, there were the pages are super dense, so there were quite a few times where I felt like I could combine two panels, sometimes even three, um, and or just like not show interpreting the script to not just show like faces talking, and showing more atmospheric shots, which is something that I really enjoy bringing into my work. Because also like talking heads are not always the most engaging, just like in general. So which like was nice. Like Jasmine was like, take this as you will, like go for it. So I did a lot of like incorporating a lot of atmospheric shots and a lot of combining panels where I could, just to make my job a little easier. Yeah, and every time I did that, Jasmine like noticed and was like, "This is great. This is cool. Like I love this." Which like felt really really cool. Like again, like working with people who are sticking by like what they say. Like Jasmine said, we're collaborators. And like that wasn't just like fluff, like she meant it. And so I really felt like as I was drawing the book, it really felt like I was part of it. I'm not just the illustrator, and that usually gets like knocked off to the side. Um, like I was a true like co-creator in a sense, even though it's not my story. Um, yeah, it felt really good. So I can't really think of any specific pages, but definitely like yeah, just kind of like combining stuff, maybe like a few speech bubbles all in one panel versus like spread out throughout a couple panels. But just like little things like that, but like little things like that that not other writers wouldn't have necessarily reacted positively to, because a lot of writers get very precious and territorial about their scripts, and take edits as like personal attacks. So the fact that that didn't happen with this was really positive, and I think is what like makes Brooms so much better. I think you can like, I don't know, hopefully people can sense that there's a lot of like love and like respect that went into the book, like no beefing, so pretty big.
Yeah, and also, Luella's character is mixed with Mexican heritage, specifically because we had Teo on the book.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah, a lot of. Go
Oh, no, I was
ahead.
gonna say, so Jasmine asked at one point, I don't remember where we were in the process, but Jasmine asked if there was anything I would want to incorporate, like personally in any of the characters. I think you were talking about Luella, and I brought up that like it would be really cool if we had some Mexican American representation, because we didn't have that in the book, and Luella was like the perfect like option for that. Like we could, oh yes, because this was before I designed her dad. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we were talking about her parents because we so rarely see her mom. Well, there's a scene with her dad, and that was going to be the perfect opportunity to have them, cooking or making food together. And like, what do we bring to that? Like, well, he could be Mexican American. So they're using molcajete and making like masa and making quesadillas. And I was like, wow, this is so cool that like she asked me how I wanted to be like included, and it really meant a lot that I could like throw in some Mexican American representation into the story in such a like positive and like casual way. Like it was really really nice. So yeah, that was really fun. A really cool aspect of Luella that also made me like she's probably my favorite character. It's really hard to pick, but Luella really grew on me as I was drawing her. She has a lot of quiet strength that the more I drew her, the more I really, really like loved her, resonated with her. She's so cool.
I think that we all like really appreciated the pages where there's no text, it was just sort of the landscape, and I feel like that it felt like I felt like I could feel her human and like that there were like ideas and things like that. That felt very real with not having like text. So I did feel very comforted, which is why I had that question. And then I do have a second question, which is have you considered delving back into sort of the like fairgrounds? Just because I feel like there's so many characters and it just seems so interesting and I want to read about that.
Oh.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I was just wondering if you were considering maybe like delving back in at any point in the future to sort of the fairground, like the racers and the community. You discussed how you base that sort of off of the queer communities, the safe spaces that are being created for themselves, which is so cool. And I really wanted more. So I was just wondering if you've ever considered it.
Listen, if Tay ever wants to work with me again on more broom racing, I am 1000% down. But we did not plan on any other stuff.
That was my goal with like all of those group shots or any character really. Like, there's so much work that goes into a graphic novel that is so like unseen, and like one of those would be like for me, I spent a lot of time like and a lot of intention drawing every character. Like even I don't know, like even the two police officers, like I thought about like what they would look like, and I wanted every person to look different. Um, and so like part of that was like I created like little stories in my head for all of the characters I drew. Like they weren't just like a random person I just pulled out of my head. So yeah, I mean like it's a very nice compliment to hear that like you would want to know more, because like in my head they were like they all had their own lives and stuff. Um, yeah, so if we ever like feel like delving into that, there's certainly a lot of material. A lot of inspiration.
A series of short stories.
Oh, cute!
An
They're
origin
so
story for the
cute.
bone shaker.
There we go.
Yes.
The Bone Shakers.
Yes.
So
Like
I
really dive into further history with them. Like this is the end of it for them.
Started.
A prequel, a prequel.
I feel like the Bone Shakers have become a universal favorite, for sure. And which I'm glad
my
for because they were
favorite.
one of my favorites, absolutely.
Totally.
And one thing I like doing about, especially working in graphic novels, but any kind of storytelling, is leaving those little bits for readers specifically to kind of build their own stories for. Like, I don't want every single thing in the story to be explained, specifically because I think it's fun. Even as a reader, like, yes, I want all those big plot points to get wrapped up nicely, but like when you have interesting side characters and you just can't stop thinking about them. I love that in books when I feel like the characters who you meet are not just cardboard cutouts there to push along the main character story, but they have their own lives. So I'm really glad to hear that everybody's so invested in the other racers because me and Tara both had a lot of fun putting them together. And yeah, one thing I love is hearing about the kind of which racers people love, which teams they loved best. One thing I kind of hope for secretly is that people will think about like who would be their own racing team. Like, would they join a pre-existing team or would they have built a new one, and what would it be called? And what would their kind of theme be? So I always like hearing about people's thoughts on the different racing teams.
Oh, actually, a fun note then about the racing teams. I can never remember, but Jasmine, the punk team. I always wanted the
The
screaming
Screaming
demons.
Demons.
Yes. There's so many. They were actually like inspired. So Jasmine wanted them to be like punk, adjacent, whatever that means in 1930s. And I was like, cool. I'll just like I research everything like crazy. So my instinct was to put them all in leather jackets. But then I was like, well, what kind of leather jackets? And then when I was doing some research, I found two photographs or one photograph, I can't remember, of like proto punks from the 1930s with leather jackets and like jagged haircuts and like bandanas. It was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And so a bunch of like I think in the photograph there are three people. And so I drew those three people, their outfits at least, on three of the characters in the like punk team. And then the other outfits I kind of like, just mixed around a little bit. Um, but yeah, like that was like one of the coolest things. And I didn't know how like there's no like way for me to be like this is like based on real people. So I just like to bring it up in book clubs because like they're I don't know. I also don't know how I found it. I don't know what like rabbit hole I went in, but I legitimately found some 1930s punks, proto punks, and it was really really cool to see.
Speaking of based on real people, is the host the actor who plays Guillermo on What We Do in the Shadows?
Yes, yes it is. It's Harvey Guillen.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yes.
I'm so happy someone noticed that. Yes, I love Harvey Guillen. He is an incredible human, one of my favorite actors. And when I got the character description for that announcer, I was like, oh my god, because he's talked in interviews about how he's very like flamboyant. I mean, like if you follow him, like you see his outfits on the red carpet, he's just like the most gorgeous outfits, and he talked about how he's very flamboyant and loud and sassy in real life, and not at all like how quiet his character is. And I was like, well, this seems like a very like nice homage to him to have him in this like very ostentatious role of like if there could ever be like a Brooms movie or show, I would want him to be in it, obviously. So that was just me being like, well, if anyone wants to make this into a show, Harvey Guillen can be the announcer, and I would be so happy.
That makes me really happy. Yeah, I mean, A plus fashion all around. So I was like, oh yeah. Um, there seem to be some recurring imagery with monarch butterflies. Did I
Mm,
Yeah. Okay. Great.
mhm.
That's like, oh no. Was that on purpose? Did you just like them? Was there important placement or symbolism?
I as a Chicane person, like monarch butterflies with their like a lot of symbolism with like Mexican culture, which I like realized after I started drawing them that I actually don't know their migratory patterns and if they would even be in Mississippi. But then I was like, well,
It's fine. They have
it's a
magic.
butterfly. Yeah. It's a magical butterfly. Yeah, no, I just think
They do.
there's
They do go through
oh,
Mississippi.
oh
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so I just like I have a soft spot for them in moths, but like moths I wouldn't really all the daylight scenes. I was like they could be out, but so like I guess the daylight version of a moth is a monarch butterfly for me. Um yeah, I liked just having that little bit of my culture in there. And I guess I would have to look into more. It's so funny because I also really love snakes, and it turns out like a lot of trans people really like snakes and like what snakes represent, and I didn't realize that until like a couple months ago. And so now I'm like, I'm wondering what like if there's any like symbolism in the queer or trans community with monarch butterflies, and like that's like some conscious thing I'm like resonating with. But yeah, it was for me at least, at least consciously, it was just like I think they're very beautiful. I think they add some nice aesthetics, very like Miyazaki, adding like just insects around it, like that they. It's a nice shortcut to show like living things in a scene. But then other than that, I was like, yeah, some like Mexican culture like in there, or like Latinx um, culture in general, not just Mexican, but coming from my culture at least.
Yeah, I do a lot of for folks I know who identify with butterflies. It's for the symbolism of right, like regrowth and renewal and being reborn, and sort
Hmm.
of all of the stages are important and beautiful in their own way. But sort of where you land on the butterfly is your where you
I
were
would say
meant.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, that feels like that resonates with all of the characters then.
Can I ask you each what you're most proud of from this book?
That it exists, honestly. Like,
Mhm.
if you don't make graphic novels, it's really hard to know how much work goes into them. Uh, it is very easy to start one. It is very difficult to finish one. um, and this book I had to go back into my emails and actually check the date of when I emailed Teo first, and it was in 2016. It was a long time ago. We didn't really get started on the book until about 2018. That's when Teo was drawing up the concepts and I was finishing up the pitch to send to the editor. But even then, 2018 to 2023, that's a 5-year haul. And you know, while we got incredibly lucky with this book, we got a great team, we had a great publisher, we great editor. Um, there was also a lot happening in the world at the time. We had 2016 straight through 2023. Like, I don't know, there's so many things happening. Like, just imagine everything that happened in between there. And we're not just creators, we're human beings who interact with the world. And um a lot of the things that were going on are still going on are incredibly emotional. Black Lives Matter movement is something that hit me really hard. um and it's something that continues. It's I see the news every day, everything that happens. And to write a book set almost 100 years ago. Write a book set about 90 years ago, and to see the exact same issues happening around you, that can be tough. When you do the research for the book, it can be tough. But at the same time, I'm really happy you got to write a book that was so hopeful, that's so full of joy, that is unapologetic. And to put it out in the world, and so that everybody, teens especially, what I really wanted was I wanted kids in schools who don't go to comic shops regularly, who don't even know what Kickstarter is, to pick up this book and be able to read it and know that someone out there is writing stories and creating worlds where they get to thrive and they get to be the ones who win, and they're not just a side character with 2 lines. So the fact that this book exists in the world and is coming from like a pretty awesome publisher and is getting put into schools, like just knowing that it's in the hands of all these people is just brings me a lot of joy. So the fact that the book exists for me is what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, I would say the same. I guess like a slightly different, but also not. Um, I had a, a good like amount of like years of experience under my belt before starting Brooms. So I knew the undertaking, I knew the commitment. I just didn't anticipate having to work on it when everything was going down. So I had a long comic project before Brooms that got delayed because the pandemic hit, and then of course that sent a cascading effect of with all my other projects, including Brooms. So for like 3 years, I was kind of just scrambling to catch up on work that had been delayed in one way or another because of the pandemic, and that was obviously not something I had like planned for. So for 3 years, I kind of just felt like I was kind of just like struggling to keep my head above water, while also like trying to make money for rent or for our mortgage, and so it was definitely like it's something I'm trying to be like transparent about. I'm very private. I've been I've been called a ghost online because I don't really talk about myself or do anything online because I don't really like to. But like with Brooms, like I want to be obvious that like I had a difficult time, not because of the content, but just because like creating art when like as a brown queer trans person, even in Seattle, like you know, Seattle's super super white, lots of like conservative like Proud Boys and like all that stuff is here too. And like with we Seattle or like Washington West Coast had a lot of really bad wildfires the last couple of years too, which was something that really affected my mental health as someone who usually spends a lot of time outside. Um, so yeah, there's just like it's not something I don't think like casual readers will ever get, and I guess want them to get that, but it like I think it's important to talk about for non-artists and artists to know like how much work goes into one of these books, and like even on my like really really tough days or like tough months where I could like barely draw, um I still was like, well, I knew I was gonna finish it because Brooms was so important, and like I knew it needed to exist. So I guess I'm just like really grateful that I had such a good team, and I Jasmine totally had my back the whole time. Every time I sent a message of like I haven't drawn for a week because my brain is so sad, and she was like, "Okay, don't worry about it. I got you. I'll talk to the editor." I was like, "Okay, great. I feel like trash, but thanks." Like it was like so so cool. Like I'm really just glad the book exists, but I'm really glad that like it really showed that there could be a really positive like book community of like helping each other overcome stuff instead of it just being like you didn't hit your deadlines, you're fired. Because I definitely worked with other teams where if I had had this like mental health struggle, they would have just been like, okay, cool, like bye. And so yeah, I'm just really really grateful that it all came together the way it did, even though it was really difficult. It was definitely like worth it, and one will continue to be worth it.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, being proud that the book exists is uh, this is no small feat. Having a book that we can hold and, like you said, be in classrooms and it's incredible. So I'm glad that you were able to put in so much of yourselves and so much of the work to bring us this story. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Are you able to share any information about upcoming projects that you might be working on?
Wait. Let me give me a second. Let me think if I'm allowed to or not. I have 2 upcoming projects. They are both still under wraps, so I can't announce them. But if
They're
you've
super cool.
ever, yeah,
But they're
I
super
mean,
cool.
I'm excited for them. Legally, I can't say anything. I'm hoping. So here's one that's hasn't been. It's not official or anything. We're waiting to see if anyone will pick it up. But I'm very excited about a book I'm pitching, which is about 2 young Black ace kids who, for various reasons, don't want to come out to their family. So they decide, in the wisdom of teenage years, they're going to fake date each other, despite the fact they don't like each other very much. One of them is a kind of a stuck-up prep, and the other one is kind of a dumb jock. And they decide the best way to handle the situation is to fake date. And I wanted, because as someone who's both asexual and aromantic, I always want the fun of a rom-com without the romance, but no one writes that. So I was like, guess it's gotta be me. I'll do it. So it's gonna be an enemies to friends, fake dating ace story. And I'm very, very excited. It's gonna be an absolute comedy. I just wanted goofy teens making bad decisions.
That's all the making way.
Thank you. So hopefully that will become a book in the next few years.
For me, I can't say the title, but and I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. I think it's Kaysen Calendar.
Oh my god, yes. Sorry.
Yes, okay. Yeah, Kaysen. I just feel like I've never said their name out loud, and I was like, oh god, I hope this is correct. They wrote their first graphic novel, and I am going to be the illustrator, and I will start working on that in a few, I guess less than a couple months from now. Yeah, like not too long. We'll have it started, and then it should be out in oh my god, what year is it? It should be out in 2026. By 2026. So that'll be my next project. And then other than that, hopefully just I don't know, working on more personal art now that I've so yeah.
That sounds
I'm really excited to work with Kaysen.
So
Really cool.
excited. You are also very excited. We adore Kaysen and every single, which they have a shelf in the back, but who is the publisher?
The publisher is Abrams.
Oh, perfect.
They're
Wonderful.
yeah, Abrams Graphic Arts. Yeah.
And we know to start counting.
Yeah.
Would you like to reach out to?
It'll be great. We're excited. We're ready. Okay. That's
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I'm really excited to work with them. The story's very, very up my alley, and the editor is super sweet, and yeah, it all has it has really good energy. So I'm really looking forward to starting that.
And Jasmine, you also have had a few books come out recently. I know we just got Vixen Volume 2, Vixen NYC, and the
thank
third,
Cardboard Kingdom.
Yes! Because, Barbara Perez Marquez works here in our store.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah! So
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we are huge. I mean, even if she did, we are huge Cardboard Kingdom fans. But yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
when I told Barbara that we were going to be reading Broom, she was like, "Oh my god, Jasmine!"
No, Barbara's great. Whenever we see each other at cons, we do the whole little finger guns at each other, heck yeah. No, this year was a weirdly wild year where I had I think a total of 6 books come out in one year, which is bizarre.
Bananas.
I had a couple. I was counting and I was like, "Is this for real?" Yeah, we had a couple. I think it's because I had books come out in January that I'd written a year before. I had a couple kids' books come out. I had Brooms, of course, and We've got, yeah, with the Vixen books. It was really fun working on Vixen. I was not used to doing episodic weekly episodes for webtoons or doing like a scrolling format, but it was a blast. That team was also really, really fun. That whole team is absolutely fantastic. So if you like kind of superhero comics and you haven't heard of Vixen yet, she's really fun. It was a blast. They let me get away with so much in that comic, and I was like, okay, y'all just gave me a whole bunch of freedom. They pretty much let me do whatever I wanted. Yeah, so it was a really good year for me putting books out. I was surprised. I forget about it sometimes, and I'm like, oh wait. Yeah, so it'll be a while before you see any other ones though, because they all came out this year, and I'm like, all right, so in about 5 years you'll get a bunch more.
Do you get any time to read any comics? Have you been reading anything
God,
lately that you've been
yes.
enjoying?
I am an absolute reader. I read so much, especially when I'm avoiding working, which happens a lot. I read a ton. Let's see, some favorite comics would be Snapdragon by Cat Lay. If you haven't read it, it is an absolute stunner of a graphic novel. It also has witches in it, unexpected witches, and it's so much fun. Some other ones, if you like horror, A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll. It's her newest book. Gorgeous. It's gonna haunt you. The ending stuck with me for days. I'm gonna do. Let's see. What's one more? I read a lot. Oh my god! If you like manga, Kaiju #8, absolute stunner of a manga series. Yeah, I read a lot. I read a lot of prose as well. But I'm gonna cut myself off. If you ever want a list, reach out to me on like Blue Sky or something.
Amazing choices. So Snapdragon is like a perennial favorite. I'm obsessed with it. I recommend it to every child that does it. And we did a guest in the house last month for our horror.
Oh heck yeah!
2 months ago. Jeez, time.
Y'all know then.
Yeah, and I can agree. That's awesome. Teo, do you get any reading today?
No, I've been kind of switching more to TV. Mostly just because it's something like communal I can do with my spouse at the end of the day. Um, but with like I went to a few like book festivals, and that was at New York Comic Con. So I got a bunch of books. I was just looking it up because I can never. I always confuse it with a different horror thing. But Let Me Out by Emmett Nahill is a new
So
book,
good.
like Satanic Panic 70s. I love anything about the Satanic Panic. It's so fascinating, super duper cool. So yeah, Let Me Out is really good. I read that one and I was like, oh, it's such a perfect example of like, oh yeah, I need to read graphic novels again because they're so good. I was just kind of like burned out on looking at like drawings on a page. So Let Me Out's really good. Then what was the other one I had just um, literally just thought about, but now I cannot remember. But Emily Carroll had been on my mind a lot, obviously with Halloween, like spooky season. Um, but a bunch of others on my to read list though would be the Santi and Yander were here, and the I think it's the Secret of the Conch Moon, which are both like Chicane like representation, like stories that I bought them for the covers and for like because they had like Latinx representation, but those are like I'm so excited to read those. So those will be on my to-do list. But in the meantime, I've just been watching a lot of video essays on YouTube about really niche Broadway shows.
Um, well, you certainly don't have to. But do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, my favorite question, we learned this from the last bookstore visit we did, is I love hearing what people's favorite page is or scene. Because we might have secret lore behind it. But I love hearing like what scenes or pages people loved.
You
you have the bathtub where they're both their foreheads are pressing. It's both emotionally beautiful but also just beautiful to look at. I love the way the sun shines.
That was one of our favorite scenes when I wrote the script.
Mhm.
I think literally in the script, I was like, give me all of the soft, cozy vibes that you can, and Teo delivered.
I feel like the sun feels like it's their love, like the warmth of the sun,
Oh,
like as well as the
yeah, that was so Bex I left a lot of coloring notes for Bex in this scene because I had a very obviously I was very emotionally invested in this scene. Um so I left our colorist with a ton of notes of like lighting, how I wanted the lighting to look, and they just like absolutely nailed it. It was so I was like floored when they turned the colors in for that scene. It was like exactly what I pictured. Like yeah, they got the softness of the lighting and like everything like that. Yeah, so that scene was definitely a particular favorite. I spent a lot of time on those pages because I wanted it just right. So
it has a print on my wall. So it's beautiful.
That would make a nice print.
You ever want to
it
make it a print?
would. That's actually a great idea. I would love an excuse to redraw that as like a print form or
Oh,
something because
yes.
they're so cute.
There were like I liked so many of them. I can't figure it. I really liked the swan, the paper swan scenes.
Yeah. Like
So like just
are the girls
like this.
Yeah.
The
For
sky
send the
was
message.
beautiful, and it was
Yeah.
like so evocative without necessarily words. And I love the concept of the magical paper note, like they're passing notes, but it's magic. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cute. I really liked drawing that scene too. But like anything with like soft magic or like very like almost like small magic um felt so powerful and so special. It's like what a cute way for these two like people who love each other to keep in contact.
Yeah.
I really loved 140 and 141, but this like really soft scene um, where she brings it, she gets a new dress and asks if she can have it mended for her. And I just, even though she's acknowledging like she's completely exhausted, she's run out of steam, and then she's like, "Well, can you mend this dress for me?" And she's like, "Of course I can." Like just that love and care, and then how soft it is with them sitting in the field, and there's like fireflies around them, and just it's so like intimate in like their friendship and how much they care about each other. I really love that scene.
Yeah, for that one, I wanted to make sure that Billy May is not this like superhuman. She's she's not infallible, and she's not like she gets tired. She's fighting really hard all the time, and they get tired. They all do. Um, and I wanted to show that one, they do get tired. They're not like this is not all just them being powerful at every minute of every day, but also that they have this friendship to hold them together, despite how exhausted they might be or how much life might take them down. That if, as long as they've got each other, they're good, and they can be safe to rest, which I think is really important, especially in communities of color. It's so hard to rest, and it's so hard to feel safe enough to rest. And I wanted to make sure that these girls had something like that.
I think minus the, I guess I kind of calling it like the epilogue at the end. I'm just like, I'm a sucker for those type of flash forward things. And I love alternate history. So the kind of illusion of Billy May at the Olympics to like what had actually happened. I was like, ooh, I love this. So it was really interesting to hear you say that that was kind of a later on addition. It was a part of the whole original idea.
Yeah, because the book ends, and there was a lot of questions of like, oh, will people want a sequel? And I was like, okay, we're not going to burden Teo with that level of pressure. So we're like, how can we give people enough that it feels satisfying, that that they're not going to move away and suddenly something horrible happens. Where I was like, no, I wanted to make it incredibly clear that they all have incredibly fulfilling lives, and I really loved the idea that our editor had of doing like a scrapbook where you can kind of flip through and get a glimpse at their futures, and how cool they were. And then the Olympics was. I also love alternate histories. And it was really fun to be like, what do they change about history? Like having Luella become a lawyer and actually make these huge changes in the country's laws that affect her community and everyone else. And then I was like, you gotta know that Billy May is going to be a powerhouse. So I was like, all right, how can she make the biggest impact? And I was like, she absolutely would just do it at the Olympics. And then, I also wanted to have a call out to, Black history with the Olympics. And yeah. And then have her return and her laugh at the reporter who tries to question her about it. Like, that was really fun.
So good.
I think one of the other scenes that we introduced later on was a lot of the flashback scenes didn't exist in the first draft. And they add so much to the story that I'm really, really glad that our editor encouraged us to add, like the flashback scene where we see Billy May and the older girls all meeting each other, where she's trying to ride that broom and it's not a good idea. I feel like it gives us a really good sense of their personalities over time, and how close they are. And then I think also part of the flashback where Luella meets Billy May in the graveyard, that also didn't exist beforehand. And yeah, so our editor did a fantastic job of being like, how about you add a couple little things here and there, and I think it added depth to the book that it didn't have before.
I think in his words, he was like, "I want to know more, so can you write more?" I think
Yeah,
something
pretty
along
much.
those lines. He was very invested in the characters, and
Which is
wanted-
nice.
Yeah, no, it was so great. He was like, "I love them. I want to know how they met." So yeah, cool dude.
I think the meeting in the graveyard and her crying over her cars being sealed makes it more powerful when Billy May's ancestors breed her too.
Yes.
That's even an addition to so
I think that Luella's character in particular changed the most. She was fine before, but she didn't have quite the depth that she has in the final book, and that's in large part absolutely thanks to our editor and to Teo, because I know that the scene where she comes running, I had written the scene where she meets the ancestors. Oh, and here's a secret bit of lore. The ancestor, the ghost that touches her wrist and breaks the seal on her wrist, is Billy May's grandmother, the one who used to race. That's never mentioned, but it's in the script. And but the scene where she shows up in the forest and hits the man with a stick, that's actually thanks to Teo. And because Teo was like, I wish that Luella could have a bit more fierceness. And I thought about it, and I was like, how do I introduce this into the script? Where can I fit it in? Because I agreed, I felt like she kind of faded into the background a little bit, but she has this quiet fierceness, and it needed to show up more on page. So, yeah, and I think that scene is great because it really shows how protective she is, and she's like, nah, I'm not going to let you hurt the people I love. And yeah, so a lot of her fierceness, I had added I sprinkled a little bit of it in, but a lot of those more overt scenes are thanks to Teo and our editor's input, which thank goodness, because I feel like it really added to her character.
Anyone have any questions for each other? Did you have more questions for us?
No, just thanks for reading, honestly. Like, I appreciate it. I love hearing from readers. It's when you're working on a book and then it goes out into the world aside from doing the very dubious thing of looking up reviews, which you should not do, it's really hard to know what people think about the book beyond like someone who is either angry enough or happy enough to go online and write about it. Like it might show up on lists, but other than that, it's hard to really know what people think of the book and how much they enjoyed it. So thank you for having us, because being able to actually interact with the people who are reading it means so much and brings us joy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. First of all, congratulations for making some of the best of 2023 lists. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you.
So that's outstanding. But yeah, thank you so much for making the time to talk with us. I think no matter how much we come to the table already loving the book, when we get to hear from the creators about all of the parts of themselves and their families and their vision that they put into the story, it just makes it that much richer. Especially when you have such a wonderfully collaborative team who really played off each other's strengths and brought that to the book. So thank you so much for sharing so much of yourselves in the story and with us, and for gifting us this book.
Thank you. Thanks for reading it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much.
Yeah, we're so excited for the upcoming projects you have, secret and otherwise. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon. And thanks for making time to talk with us at New York Comic Con and being really lovely in a very loud space. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for stopping in, and best of luck to the store. It looks like such a cute space. If I'm ever over there, I'm definitely gonna come in because
Yeah, please do. We clearly
looks fun.
will ask you both for help as a baker and a barista. So
Right?
Yes.
I'll work for an hour and get some free books. It's fine. I'll do it.
yeah, love that treat. Thank you both so much.
Well, thank you so
you.
much. It was nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Or afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.